Hello and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Lester and thank you for joining us for episode 52, where tonight we're going to analyse that Liverpool game and wring every little bit out of it we can. We're going to take your questions and then look ahead to Southampton. We've got our two midfield generals to guide us through, and we are absolutely delighted to be joined by Liquid Gold Voice, BBCWM's Mike Taylor. Good evening, gentlemen. Mike's commentated on a 3-0 win. My two pundits are happy. We're happy. We're going to have a good podcast. Mike, you were there covering the game on Saturday for BBCWM. Start us off with your take, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, nothing can go wrong now. Look, it was a really sound performance. You were better attacking and better defending than Liverpool were. That's the top and bottom of it. Lopetegui was saying in the interview afterwards, he said, I thought we kind of lost the thread a bit in the first part of the second half and then came on strong to score the third goal and go away. And that's fair enough. But in the first 25, 30 minutes of the game, you were a much more potent attacking force than Liverpool were at any stage. And although, I saw the match of the day highlights and how Liverpool had so and so many percent of the possession in the second half, and I don't doubt they had, but there was no bite. They didn't really look like scoring. Jose Sarr made some good saves, but none that you wouldn't really have expected him to make. So it was as comfortable as you could have hoped for. So sound in every department.
Nocky, obviously you were there as well with your lads sharing that special day. Your take as well. I'm guessing we're all going to be having a similar vibe to this, but it was a special afternoon for us as fans as well.
It was fantastic. It was one of my favourite days, I think, since we've been promoted back to the Premier League. It wasn't just the fact that we won the game, it was the manner in which we won the game. It was the way we played, the way we attacked them for the first 10, 15 minutes, and Molineux was alive again. We scored, the first goal, it's an own goal, but I think the movement from Hwang was really good. The ball over the top from Sarabia is fantastic. Dawson's absolutely smashed the second in. And then, we have had to soak up a lot of pressure, like Mike said, but the way we controlled them, we kept them at arm's length. We didn't let them get through us. We didn't let them get around us. We just controlled them really well. And the chances they had were kind of our own making when we switched off. And it was nice to actually not get punished for making mistakes. And then the third goal, it was brilliant. For me, on a personal level, to see my son, who's 8 years old, celebrate the way he did when the third went in, and then just to feel that emotion around the stadium. But for me, I think the highlight of the whole game was injury time when we were Olaying Liverpool, a team that have won everything there is to win, and one of the biggest names in world football, and we're taking the mick out of a team like that, and the round of applause at the end, which ended in the full-time whistle. It was just an absolutely fabulous day, and you take the goals out of it and just look at the performance itself, and some of the displays in there were phenomenal. Lamina, Dawson, we got them two for less than 15 million, and they were absolutely fantastic. I couldn't pick a bad player on the pitch. I think everyone was at least a 7 out of 10. It was a really, really good day. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Tyler, me and you were just nodding away to Mike and Nocky there. They might have taken everything there is to say, but it was a family day for you as well, and another special one.
Yeah, there's not much to add. Is that the boys have covered it from an initial response. Like Mike said, we were just better than them for large parts of the game. And I've been a Wolves fan over 30 years now, and I was 2-0. I still wasn't comfortable in the slightest. And if Liverpool score, I think Molineux's different, but I think Knocker got it right. The third goal was the lift of relief, wasn't it? The Molineux hasn't sounded like that for a long, long time. It was just that you could almost just feel it, and it just went off. And I know we'll probably come on to the slight tweaks the commercial team have made that seem to give for a better match day experience as well. And just one of those days, isn't it? Yeah, same as Knocker, my lad was there. I met Knocker before the game, and I asked this lad what the score would be, and he did say 3-0.
Nice.
He said 3-0 to Liverpool, though, so we can't. So I think even the kids, have got the same probably outlook as me and Knocker have got. But we were all positive when we spoke last week, and jokes aside, we did all say, didn't we? If we get at them, they're beatable. This isn't the Liverpool side that we've seen the last 2 or 3 years, and the players just got that message, because I've not seen a Wolves team start like that for a long, long time. Even in the peak, I've not seen us come out the blocks like that before.
Yeah. Well, this is it, Mike. Obviously, as I mentioned, you were there for BBCWM. We've been saying on this podcast, we've been saying on social media, let's just start. Let's get an early goal. Let's see what happens, because hand in hand, the atmosphere goes with the team scoring early goals and performances. And it was a dream start for Wolves.
Yes, it was, and I mean, I think you raised a good point there about the atmosphere, because I did see quite a bit of chat, after recent home games, saying the atmosphere is no good, and I think those things do go together. This is a team that's lost half of its home games for the last 2.5 years, and I appreciate for some of those the weren't fans in, and it was certainly a conversation that some of us journalists had during the lockdown games from afar across the press box, saying, "Are Wolves been affected more than other teams?" I think probably all teams were affected to some degree by a lack of atmosphere, but it did seem to knock Wolves, given that what the season before had been like. But if the team's not scoring any goals, then the crowd aren't going to get excited, and so it's a chicken and egg thing. Saturday did feel different, and it felt different from before the first whistle.
Yeah.
And we just picked up there. And I don't follow it closely enough to notice, things like I did notice there was different music being played in the build-up. No, that might be getting a bit too over the top to analyse that as some part of it. But there was a different atmosphere in the stadium from the beginning. And for Wolves to start like that, you just set a virtuous circle going.
Yeah, it was a wonderful start. It was a wonderful start, Tyler. And I know it was given as a Matip goal, but it was a really nice bit of build up. Sarabia's he's looked up, he's seen the run of Hwang. I mean, I'm not sure what the central defenders are doing because they went to him and stood off, but Hwang couldn't have done really much more there. I'm not sure he was trying to play it in off the player, but he made the run, he kept himself on side, and Wolves have put a team in a position. And my dad always says to me, make the defence face their own goal and you're going to get joy. And that was a classic case of positive football, Wolves getting forward early.
Yeah, I think Hwang splits opinion, doesn't he? And I'm his biggest critic. And I think again, talking outside the ground, we sort of the line up and thought, okay, is that the one that we probably weren't sure about? But he fully justified his place again, didn't he? He was busy, he was bright until the injury. And that run, I don't know, another player might not make that run, but I think what Sarabia did well, where often there we'd have gone back to the centre-back, we'd have recycled it, we'd have started again. We played the ball over, we played the direct ball, and that was a noticeable change as well. Yeah, Matip's defending was questionable, but quite frankly, who cares? And it was always in, wasn't it? And it was a great start, and probably none of us expected it, but then 5 minutes later, you're in dreamland, aren't you, when the second goes in? So, yeah, I think just a shout out for Hwang, really. He's probably the one that's come on a lot, and he looks to be playing with a bit of confidence now. His first touch, he's better, he's brighter, he's turning, he's more aggressive. It's crazy what happens when you have good managers at football clubs, isn't it?
I would say as a whole, I think every player looks more comfortable. They look more confident, and it appears, I know Mike mentioned this on Twitter, but there appears to be more of a plan and a slight identity emerging of who Wolves are now and what they're doing, and the confidence he's feeding throughout the squad. But as you mentioned there, Tyler, it quickly became 2-0 Nocky, and as ex-Albion players do signing for Wolves, they love thumping a goal home.
It was a brilliant finish as well. It was a proper centre-half finish where it just shut your eyes and crack it as hard as you can. It was great. But again, the build-up was good. The free kick came in from Neves. Cunha's quick. He's reacted to it. He knows he can't get a shot on goal, so he takes the ball away. Liverpool stand off him. Don't really know why, so it gives him a chance to pick that pass. Kilman with a header. Could have been handball, but it bounces back, and it's an absolute thunderous finish. And he had a really good game. Dawson, I was really impressed with him. When he came in, we were thinking, is he going to be back up? Is he just going to pop in and do the odd appearance? But he's starting games, isn't he? And he deserves to, because he was great. There's no frills about him. I think Nunes skipped past him in the first half, and he nearly snapped him in half with a fantastic reducer. And he got better and better. I think he grew into the game. He's a leader, isn't he? And he's a voice that maybe we've missed. And I think the important thing about him as well, he makes Kilman a better player, because the one thing we've really missed Cody for is that leadership with Kilman, because I think Kilman was a better player with Cody because he had someone telling him where to go, directing him, telling him where to be. And I think he's got that with Dawson. And again, Kilman had an excellent game. So cracking second goal, great build-up. And we were just at them. We were at the throats. From the start, we were alive. And it was, our midfield was better than theirs. And I never thought I'd say that about a Wolves-Liverpool game, but we've got better midfielders than they have. And we just exploited every area of the pitch. We had a real game plan going into that, and it was brilliant to see.
Well, Klopp afterwards wasn't very happy, and I'm a terrible loser as well. I don't like talking about Wolves when they've lost, but it was clear to see Klopp wasn't happy. Tactically been done. I mean, we'll talk about the shape a bit later. You mentioned it to me, Tyler. It was sort of a bespoke 4-4-2, which wasn't expecting. We saw Matthias Cunha sort of on the left-hand side that sort of nullified Alexander-Arnold. It was a real clever tactical setup. But just before we go into sort of some of the performances we picked out, Mike, that second half probably could have been over, couldn't it? With Matthias Cunha's sort of nipped in again in front of Matip. He probably should have made it 3-0. I think the game's dead then. But equally, that's the best half of football I've seen from Wolves in a very long time.
Oh, sure. Look, I mean, the two halves were very different, but I actually thought Wolves played just as well in both halves in a different way. In that, Liverpool had up until the third goal, had a lot of the football, but Wolves were so disciplined that it didn't really feel as though there was any stage they were going to crack their way through. It was, as if there was sort of a protective shell around Wolves. So, yes, Liverpool hoovered up lots of possession. And, there was still quite a lot of time left in the game when the third goal went in, but everybody knew the game was over. You could feel that the Liverpool players felt the game was over. And it was very comfortable after that. So it was just as an accomplished a performance, just with the emphasis on defending. I do think the formation is interesting. I'm not someone who counts themselves as an expert on formations and tactics and the intricacies of it. But we've had 10 games of Lopetegui now, and I think we've seen 10 different setups, but we've seen quite a few different setups. And I was thinking today, and somebody sent in a question, to you earlier. I saw it was something I was thinking about the weekend. Is what is Lopetegui ball?
Yeah, that's one of the questions.
What is Lopetegui? I don't think I know yet, but I'm not sure any of the wise for Saturday. I'm not sure whether Saturday's plan, such as it was with Nunez on the left. And Hwang on the right, and he'll obviously need a change. Lopetegui really spoke up for Hwang after the game, by the way. So I think he knows he splits opinion, but look, he started every game, and he made a point of saying unprompted to us how disappointed he was that he got injured because he'd been doing well. But there it is. I wonder if that was just a specific thing for that game, and we'll see something different next week. I'm not sure I could see Nunez starting in that specific role very often, but it worked out well enough.
Yeah, it felt like... I felt like Wolves knew Alexander-Arnold with time. He can pick a pass and a cross and a goal. He's got one of the best right foots in world football. However, he's not a particularly good defender. So if you make sure he's pinned back, and Wolves were trying to expose that side as well. So for me, it was tactically fantastic. But just something you mentioned there as well, Mike. There was a spell, and I was criticised for my opinion because I said Wolves were totally dominant. And maybe there was that spell when Liverpool had that 15, 20 minutes. But you can't expect a team to press from start to finish. It's physically impossible. You can't squeeze a team because the players, although players have never been as fit and as strong as they are now, it's impossible to do that. And you make a really interesting point that Wolves tucked in, they absorbed, he analysed. And I mean, Nocky, I'll bring you into this bit, but the tactical change to bring Jai Moutinho on when Liverpool did have Wolves pinned back, but I kind of felt it was like by design because Wolves tucked off. And like Mike was saying, well, come on then, because I think Jose Sá made one proper save in that time. There was a few bits and bobs. There wasn't clear-cut chances, but that change, Nocky, for Moutinho to come on, that just swung the game back in Wolves' favour.
Yeah, I mean, Lopetegui's an intelligent man. He knows that Liverpool's still got good players. They're having a bad season, but you've still got your Mo Salahs, you've still got Thiago, you've still got the money you spent on Darwin Nunez and players like that. So there's still a quality outfit, and they were always going to come back and put us under pressure. We were never going to control the game for 90 minutes against a team of that quality. It just wasn't going to happen. But I think what he did really well, which was important, was the way he reacted to the pressure we were under. And he brought Jai Moutinho on. And that's the kind of role that I think Jai Moutinho should be playing now. He gives you 20, 30 minutes of impact play, which is what he did, and he set the third goal up. He just reacts really well to things. I think we've had managers in the past who stick with plan A regardless and don't want to change it. I don't know whether it's saving face or they just don't know what to do, but he's very controlled in what he does. He's always looking 10, 15 minutes ahead, and the substitutions he made gave us a little bit more control in the middle. And if you win the midfield back, you're gonna win the football match. So we were just able to bring ourselves back in the game, and then we sort of broke Liverpool's hearts a bit with the substitution, I think, because we stopped that supply line, we stopped the flow, and we grew back into it. And it was excellent management. But you can see all over the pitch what Lopetegui's doing, because he's improving every player. I mean, you look at Adama, the decision making from Adama looks better. The players look more relaxed. They seem to know what they're doing as well. So good managers will know how to get out of those sort of situations when you're under pressure.
Going back a little bit in time, a bit before that substitution, Tyler, I thought what was really interesting and really brave. I think the Wolves were 2-0 up at the time, and Hwang pulled his hamstring. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it was 1 or 2-0. Wolves were definitely winning. There may have been a temptation then to bring on another midfielder, maybe to bring a centre back on. We're beating Liverpool, but there wasn't that thought. There was bring Adama on, who he can stand up any defender in the world. But for me, that shows bravery and it shows trust in Adama as well.
Yeah, I love that substitution. Because I thought, well, I was literally thinking, which way is he going to go here? The safe option would have been someone who's a bit, probably more defensive minded. Podence isn't that really, but he's, clever, he's better with the ball, he keeps it better, gets into spaces. But I really did like that substitution, because it was like, no, hang on a minute, we're 2-0 up, we're in control, we're going like for like. And obviously Liverpool, I mean, we probably didn't exploit it enough. We did for the third goal, but at times, the whole Liverpool team was in our half, and it was just waiting for that ball and behind or over the top for Adama. And obviously, we played it eventually and got the third, but I think that was in his thinking as well. Matip and Gomez were coming so high, and that ball was always on, and that was as good as I think I've seen Adama, maybe even ever. I know that's a big statement, but he just got what was going on the football pitch. Sometimes you're sort of watching him, and he's not. You're thinking he's playing a different game. He's not doing it, but his assist for Neves, he should have had another assist for Jimenez. I couldn't fault his performance at all. I thought it was excellent. But yeah, that substitution for me was as good as the ones he made later in the game.
It was a massive decision, though, wasn't it? I mean, to leave your top scorer on the bench and bring Adama on, who's not had lots of goals and assists this season, that is a big, big decision to make, because if he goes the other way, people are going to ask why he didn't bring Podence on. So that's why he's a top-class manager, because he goes game by game, decision by decision, and it was brave, but it was absolutely the right one.
I mean, how long, and apologies for repeating myself and boring anybody, but how long have we tweeted, talked about, been on the podcast, when it's in a situation like that, put Adama on the halfway line, feed that through ball. There's nothing anyone can do about it. If you play a high line and Adama plays 2 or 3 yards onside, you cannot stop that pass. It sounds really simple, but if that's the way we're using it, it's an incredible weapon, Mike. I mean, I love Adama, and I don't think he'll be there next year, but if we're using him like that between now and the end of the season, it's a weapon that can hurt anybody.
I had a good caller on the phone in tonight on WM, actually. We were talking about Adama, saying that, he might have, for want of a better way of putting it, a specialist role as a sub. And I think that opens up another point about, now having 5 substitutes I didn't think that was going to be more than a cosmetic change. And it's a very significant change. Now we're seeing it take effect over a longer period, because managers know that they can have 2 distinct ways of playing. They can start a game and make changes with confidence earlier in the game. If you can only make 3 substitutions, I don't think you bring Adama on at that point. I think you do something more conservative. Having 5 substitutions changes it. It gives you more scope to use a player like Adama. And his best performances for Wolves, I think, on the whole, are when he's come on against tiring defenders, because you're playing to his strengths. So, yeah, sometimes there have been times in the past where he doesn't look as though he's getting the plan, whatever the plan is. On Saturday, he got the plan and it worked out very well to score the 3rd goal. But I think he will be missed, because he is and again, the caller we had on tonight used the words, he's a footballing hand grenade, lobbing into a match. But even if he doesn't do anything with the ball himself, and until this weekend, he had technically no goals and no assists. I don't think those are the right measures for Traoré. The measure is how many things over his time at Wolves have happened because defenders have to be keeping an eye on him. And when they're keeping an eye on him, they're not paying attention to Raul, Diogo Jota, whoever it's been over the last 3 or 4 years. So he's worth his value in that. Whether you can sell a new contract to a guy on the basis that you'll be the specialist sub who we bring on for the last 20 minutes is another question. But I think he will be missed.
You make a really good point there, and it reminds me of one of my favourite games ever, if not my favourite game. Last season away at Villa, no goals, no assists. he was involved in every goal. He won a free kick. He won the corner. In the build-up play to the knockdown, I think he was involved in that as well. So he was involved in absolutely. But Adama does that quite a lot. But you don't get the Championship Manager or the fantasy football points for winning the corner.
There are some of the new metrics that are valuable, and some players can be well measured by those metrics. Traore doesn't fit the mould of a lot of things in football, and he certainly doesn't fit the goals and assists. He needs to have more product wherever he goes. He needs to score more goals. He's good enough to do that, but I don't think that is a really accurate measure of what he has brought to Wolves over the time he's been there.
Absolutely. He's an absolute joy, though. And if he does go in the summer, I wish him all the best. I don't always feel like that about players, but I think he's been
also fun, Ryan.
He's
fun. Get excited when you watch him, even if he's not very good.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, as a commentator, I think it's great when Traore is on the pitch because stuff happens.
Yeah.
And my job is to describe stuff that happens. There's no harder job than when nothing's happening. When he's on the pitch, stuff happens. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but stuff happens.
I was saying to the guys who sit around me that obviously if Wang's gone off, Robertson would have been looking over and he'd been going, "Are you joking me? We're 2-0 down, and now I've got this guy coming on like the footballing hand grenade." He's such a good analogy. I love that. I've got to use that. Whoever's phoned in and said that, that's brilliant. But yeah, Adama Traore, I hope we see more. But I know we'll talk about Southampton, but I think because of his performance, Adama's got a very good chance of starting at Southampton, maybe to show he can do that for a whole game as not just opposed to, well, he still played over an hour, didn't he? I think on Saturday, he still played over an hour, which is quite a long time for a sub. Going back to moving on to the third goal, as we're just talking about Adama, then the tremendous recovery, the tenacity of Jao Moutinho, snapping away, but not just throwing himself in, putting his leg around twice, scooping it up. Adama's gone. The ball down the right-hand side, not just a ping from Adama. Stop, look, composure. Nocky, how about Ruben Neves' first touch and finish for that goal?
It wasn't just a touch and finish. It was the fact that he absolutely bust the gut to get there as well. He was 10 yards behind when Adama picked the ball up, as most people are when Adama's got the ball, but he absolutely broke his neck to get in the area. And the first touch takes 2 defenders out. He shapes to drop Alisson and then just rolls it in the bottom corner. And it's absolute pandemonium in the stands, isn't it? It was a fantastic goal. And the way he celebrates as well, it's great to see someone so immersed in the experience of what it is to play for Wolverhampton Wanderers. He really does feel part of us as supporters. I real feel a connection with him. Even though I've never met the guy, he's just something about him that draws you in, I think. And he just seems proud to wear the armband, proud to play for the club, and to work that hard. The way he does, he covers every blade of glass. I think the grass he didn't cover, Lamina was covering. They just covered everything between them, and he's a wonderful player. He's going to be. We'll all be wearing black armbands for the next 5 years when we do, unfortunately, lose him, because he's top draw.
Mike Taylor's going to get a Ruben Neves tattoo, but he doesn't know yet.
I think he's just a guy who likes playing football, and you can't have too many of those. And you would think they all do, but he is a guy who just likes playing football. If he wakes up in the morning and goes, "Oh, we haven't got a match today," you can imagine him going, "Yeah, when do we kick off?" I think there are some players. If you said, "Look, Ruben, we got 115 games to play this season. Are you up for it?" Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the League Cup tie when he says, "Ruben, we'll rest you today."
He'd be livid, but he just
doesn't love it.
And no. I was saying he loves playing. That's what I was trying to say. Not he loves being left out. But I mean, we've talked about this for the last few years. It feels more than likely that he will depart in the summer. But he's not playing like somebody that's leaving or that's on the way out. He's playing like he's wearing that captain's armband, like he loves Wolverhampton Wanderers. And as you said, Nocky, Tyler, I want to bring you on this. That celebration, this is mine. I did this. And he's sliding, and the fans, the scenes in the South Bank for that goal, it was that third goal was, to me, it felt a bit like the second goal, not quite the same, the Jota scored against Man United. Those scenes, that moment that something's happening, and it was just magical. But Neves, like Mike said, his joy for scoring that in front of his fans was magical.
Yeah, I haven't really got any words left for him, to be honest. I used imperious, I think. I don't know where I got that from, so I'm not clever enough to use that word. But
keep it, mate.
There was talk of, rightly so, Dawson and Lamina man of the match, but Neves for me was still head and shoulders above anything on that football pitch. He's just got that aura about him, his touch. I was watching him first half, just thinking, the guy's a bit of a joke, really. How he's playing for us, I've got no idea. Because he walks into any team, and I include Man City and Arsenal in that. He's that good for me. He had a run first half. That was what was nice to see on Saturday. That Adama run wasn't the thing. He did it in the first half, and Alisson beat him to the ball. It's probably the only part of his game that you could argue he could be better at, getting in the box, getting on the end of things, scoring goals. If he adds that to his game as well, you're looking at a £120 million footballer for me. I know we won't get that because of where the contract situation is, but who's better than him as an all-round central midfielder? Who is better than him? Kevin De Bruyne's won by a mile, but apart from that, I'm struggling to think of anyone.
Yeah, he has been, and he's fantastic. But again, this is, for me, someone else that's improved under the manager. Ruben Neves was good anyway, and he had little drops in form, but he was very rarely below a 7 out of 10. Now, under this manager, looking at the average positioning, he was actually the highest up of the two centre midfielders. And that when was the last time that happened? And people have talked about betting forward, but he had the running mobile wall behind him that covered everything and blocked everything. And we're maybe in a slightly higher up position like that, we're going to get even more from Neves, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, I think like you said, I think I said on Saturday night when you did your, whatever it's called, MySpace, whatever it is, I'm too old for that. But the only criticism we've had from Wolves with Neves and Matinho was that they were very similar. There weren't many legs. They weren't dynamic. That's gone now, hasn't it? Lemina's, like you said, covered every blade of grass. Nunes looks like he can run forever. That frees up Neves now. Like you said, I think you made the point. Neves is getting in the box now because he knows there's more than enough to cover behind him. And that's a huge difference. Like we said, if we can get him further up the pitch in those positions where he's either shooting, creating, we're only going to benefit, aren't we? But yeah, best I've seen by a mile of Wolves players. Incredible.
You are listening and watching to episode 52 of the Wolves Report with myself, Ryan Lester, BBC WM's Mike Taylor, Mark Knock and Chris Tyler. Currently thoroughly enjoying the analysing Wolves 3, Liverpool 0. Just want to move on. I mean, we could highlight the whole team because there wasn't a bad performance, but 4 players I've picked out. I want to start off with Craig Dawson, Mike. I know we talked about them, but his leadership. Every time a cross came in the box or a corner came in, I don't know if I'm exaggerating, I swear Craig Dawson was there. Every header, his positioning, his aggression, his timing, it was header after header after header.
Well, that's what they hired him for. I mean, Lopetegui was talking a bit on Friday about that he wanted to have an English culture. Now, I think sometimes you can make a little bit too much of that because it makes sense if no other country ever produces defenders like that. But I get his point. He did everything but say, and obviously I wouldn't suggest he was saying, but you might say that that's been something that's been a bit missing this season because whatever people thought of Conor Cody, he did certainly bring that leadership quality. Now, I think Dawson is probably a slightly quieter character than Conor, but it doesn't matter. If he's going to lead by example and do that, then that's what he's been hired to do. There's no shame in being a stopper. Not everybody needs to be a flashy defender who can pass the ball forward and all the rest of it. Do the simple things well. And if Dawson does the simple things well through until the end of the season, then everybody will be happy with that. But winning over fans of the rivals of the team you used to play for most of your career, the quickest way to do it is to score a goal like that, I suppose.
Yeah, it was Knocky. It was a wonderful finish. I know you said it was. I think you said it was a typical defender's finish, but for me, and I know I'm rolling back the years, and I've said this a few times, it was Bull-esque. He didn't think about it. He's put his laces through it, and that isn't for me. That's not the finish of a centre back. He's absolutely thumped that. If it's a defender, he's going in with it. It's a wonderful goal. I mean, I love the bit that Wolves did about. I don't know. I haven't celebrated a goal for ages. Then he's celebrating a goal. It's as good a centre-back debut for Wolves, I think, as I've ever seen, Knocker.
Yeah, and when I say it was a centre-arse finish, I mean, he hasn't tried to side-foot it into the net. He's absolutely bludgeoned it into the back of the net. And that's
good word.
That's what you want to do from that range. But yeah, he's just got an element of control. I think Tyler used the phrase presence earlier. He's absolutely got a presence. He's a big lad as well, and he was dominant. He just looks like something we've been missing. I'm a big fan of Collins. I think he's developing well. Big fan of Kilman, but they're both young men who are still finding their feet at this level. He's been there and he's done it, and he brings a level of composure and calmness about him. And if we get a couple of seasons out of him and he brings on the rest of the lads and imparts some of that obvious knowledge and experience he's got, then we're only going to benefit, especially when you're paying £3 million for a player like that. He's probably already paid that off with his performance on Saturday, if we're being completely honest. He doesn't owe us anything.
Something I picked up on then, and I think it's really, really important. I think Mike mentioned it as well, but his inclusion rubbing off on other people, Tyler, and Max Kilman's performance, probably his best performance of the season. Now, that might be coincidence, but for me, Dawson alongside him, and I know you guys don't like the number, that I love the number crunching and the who scored. He was on like one of the, his centre-back rating was like an 8.8, one of the best performances in the Premier League that weekend. And it was just, I didn't really notice Kilman as much because he didn't do anything wrong. He was just clearing up. Dawson with all the headers, Kilman with probably a little bit more football, but that effect to have on a junior centre-back next to him was marvellous.
Yeah, I think we talked about who we think would start, didn't we? And I thought it would be them two, just because of the natural balance. From having a left foot and a right foot. And yeah, I think Kilman's only going to benefit. I mean, there's an argument, should he need somebody like a Conor Cody or a Craig Dawson next to him if he's plying his trade in the Premier League? Maybe not, but if it helps him and it benefits him and he just needs that word in his ear, then who's better than Dawson to do it, really? And I think Mike's right. I think the 6 signings sort of show that we've moved away from that Portuguese Mendes type client. He's brought leaders in, hasn't he? The goalkeeper, Dawson.
Characters.
Yeah, Gomez, he's only a young man, but he seems to have all the attributes of wanting to play football, being a leader. There's a clear shift in the signings there, isn't there? Let's be honest, we can all see it. And we've been crying out for it. And again, Mike's right. Whatever your opinion is of Cody, we've missed that leadership. He went, Sace went, John Ruddy went. They're 3 what came across as leaders in that dressing room. And I think now we've only just replaced them. And the difference on the pitch was obvious to see, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's more than one way of being a leader. I mean, from what I know, and he's not a player I spent much time. I don't think I interviewed him while he was at Albion, but I don't think he's as vocal as Conor Cody off the field. I'm led to believe he's quite quietly spoken, but it doesn't matter. You could not every leader is someone who's out there, top thumping all the time. You can do it in other ways, but he does lead by example. He has the experience of doing it. And just look at the reaction of West Ham fans.
Yeah,
West Ham fans, they've sold a player for a song. I know with his age, he wasn't going to get a big fee, but relatively speaking, they've sold a player for a song to at the moment a relegation rival. Well, they're not thrilled.
Absolutely. Something else as a leader that's not often talked about. He's obviously, as you chest beating, thumping, shouting, screaming, composure, relaxed, calm on the ball, positive. I mean, there was one pass he gave away. I think that was his one poor pass. I think we can allow that. But throughout the game, composure, good decision making, so delighted. I've got a few I want to pick out, and this, I know me and Tyler slightly differ on this, but my man of the match was Lamina. That guy, it was a different kind of performance than Neves, but for me, he was the heartbeat of the team. The pressing, the tackling, recovering again and again and again. Good decision, good with the ball, not overplaying, finding the right pass, keeping it moving. But the desire to go and press, the desire to tackle, the desire to win the ball knocker, it was just, Wolves have I don't recall having a midfielder like that for a long, long time. But to have that athlete that can play football with that strength, again, £9 million looks an absolute steal.
Yeah, when we signed him, I thought he'd be a good squad player. I don't think he was half as good as he actually is. He was everywhere, and we touched on it earlier that the way he played allowed Neves to get further forward, which has improved Neves' game, and it allowed Nunes a bit more freedom. And you've just got that reliance at the back, I think. And I think Neves always felt he had to drop deep to almost play as a third centre-back when we're under pressure, and now he's comfortable leaving Lamina in that position. And I think Wolves have always been at their best when they've had that kind of big, strong lad. I mean, under McCarthy, when we had Olafiniana, we were strong in midfield, and we had Alfred and Joy in the promotion season, strong physical lads, and Alex Ray, Paul Ince. We've always had a presence in midfield, and we've always seemed to be better for it. He's not fancy. He's not going to do step overs. He's not going to do drag backs, but he'll pick up positions. He'll win the ball. He'll cover every blade of grass. And for what was it, 9.8 million Premier League level. That's an absolute steal in this day and age when you look at the fees for some players. And I've not seen it's only one performance really, but I've not seen anyone else better than him for doing that this season for or against Wolves, because he was just so disciplined and just cultured in what he was doing. It was really, really good performance, and he was my man of the match as well. I think he shone out above everyone.
Yeah, to into this style of play, he's the midfielder that looks like he fits Lopetegui's system like hand in glove. It was a fantastic performance, Tyler. I mean, I know we differ on that, and that's fine. To have two centre midfield performances that are that good, it's a great debate to have. But for me, that heartbeat, that aggression. He's not. I mean, he's not just all tackle and press as well. It looks like he can play. He's comfortable on the ball as well.
Yeah, and let's be honest, there's absolutely no issue with you thinking he's man of the match. You know, I'd give Neves a 10, and he was probably a 9.75. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing in it. The bit that impressed me, there was one moment where I think it was the first half, and it was down the side I was sitting, and Salah sort of poked the ball away from him and looked like he had a yard or two on him. And then I blinked, and the next thing, Lamina's just shrugged him out of the way, turned, picked the ball up, and gone. I was like, hang on, there's a player here. Not many people do that to him, and I thought, yeah, we've got a player on our hands. And like you said, again, look, it's early days. Like I said, it's, you know, one full game. Man City way, we couldn't really judge him too much, but he just looks neat and tidy. He looks capable. He looks no nonsense, no frills. Just exactly what we've been crying out for to complement, you know, Neves and Nunes, and who knows what the midfield looks like in the future. But who cares? You know, let's enjoy it while we've got it.
For now, Mike, it's incredibly shrewd business. It's a player of a lot of boxes that he ticks that Wolves just don't have. And the manager's come in, he's identified the lack of mobility and probably strength in centre midfield, and he's fixed it with like what looks like a bargain signing.
Yeah, it'd be a very steady signing for the rest of the season, I should think. Because, you know, there'll be different kinds of games, and I'm interested to see what combinations there are in midfield, because there are quite a few selections now that can be made. You know, Lamina, there's Nunes, there's Neves, obviously, Moutinho. So there's quite a bit of choice there and quite a bit of flexibility in the ways you can work it. And then on what occasions do you bring Podence in to play in front of that, and so on. So I suspect we'll carry on seeing different plans, and we might see different ways that some of those players are deployed. But on Saturday, it was absolutely right.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, we're waxing about these midfielders. So, Tyler, start us off with Ruben Neves' performance on Saturday. Now, I know we've already sang about him a little already, but again, you're right. For me, they're both 10 out of 10 performances, but Neves with a slightly different role. But the way, if Lamina was the heartbeat, Neves was probably the conductor, wasn't he? Just the way he was whipping the ball around and keeping it going.
Yeah, I think I said before, I'm sort of running out of stuff to say about him, really. I haven't got anything I can add. I think the goal was just the icing on the cake, wasn't it? And like I said, he tried to do it first half, which was a noticeable difference. He clearly had instruction from previous managers to play as a quarterback-type role, to not get forward. Moutinho is trying to do it, and you talked earlier in the season, Ryan, that's not Moutinho's game, to be like the legs and he's going to get caught out. We just have that balance now. The balance is absolutely perfect. And I've looked at other teams' midfield and I've sort of been a bit jealous of it. But like I said, on paper, ours was better. And there was no better player on the pitch than Neves. And I think Mike's right. There will be different games. You know, it was not a no-lose on Saturday, but Molyneux had a burst and it felt special. Going away to Southampton, at home to Bournemouth, where the pressure's going to be on us a little bit more against teams that might sit back a little bit more. Like Mike said, I think there'll be different games, different tests going forward. But, you know, Neves is the first name on the team sheet, whoever your midfield is, isn't he, really? And again, he's a captain that doesn't bawl, doesn't shout, he just leads by example. He's normally our best player, isn't he? Let's be honest. And that's how he leads the team. And yeah. If he leaves, I'll probably just support the team he moves to be honest.
Before we move on to the last player I've picked out, Mike, is there any chance Wolves can keep Ruben Neves beyond next season?
Well, there's always a chance until something else happens. I think you'd have to expect that he will move on, but we could have had exactly the same conversation this time last year.
We did,
and we did, and you know, and all those sort of tearful farewells in May, and there he was in August. So, like anything with transfers, you know, you never believe anything with a transfer that any player has moved anywhere until you've seen them with the shirt or holding the scarf up, you know. So until that time, until such time as he signs for somebody else, enjoy him while he's there.
Absolutely.
It'd be great if he does see the time out, that's up to him. I mean, you would have to think that he is a Champions League level player.
Absolutely.
At some point in his career, you would imagine he's going to end up playing at that level. You know, the days of the Steve Balls, to use, you know, the obvious example, are probably past. And you might argue that he'd be doing himself a disservice if he didn't give himself the chance to play at that level while he's in the prime of his career. But I don't sense that he's banging the door down to get out.
No, absolutely not.
So, you know, we'll wait and see what happens. Nothing's impossible until something else has happened.
Absolutely, yeah. Love it if he stays, but let's make the most of him now. And if the performance is like Saturday or anything to go by, it's going to be a fun end to the season, hopefully.
When he play, if he plays somebody else, when he then comes back to Molineux, will he be applauded into the ground?
Oh,
I would suggest
no
he will.
question.
Oh.
You know, not every, but that doesn't happen to every player, does it?
No.
But I think it will for him.
Standing ovation. He's a modern day Wolves legend, and I'm comfortable saying legend. I know it's bandied around a lot, but peak Matinho and Neves was as good as I've ever seen at Wolves, and I think Neves is probably the best player I've seen at Wolves now. My final pick out, a bit of an unsung hero, but there isn't many people that for 2 league games on the bounce pocket Mo Salah. I thought Ryan Aït-Nouri coming back into the side was fantastic. Defensive, solid, strong, mobile, tidy on the ball, good support on the left getting forward. It was a complete fullback performance. I thought it was a brave selection from the manager, Nocky, to bring Aït-Nouri in, who's not really been out in the cold, but not been involved as much because Bueno hasn't really done a lot wrong, but he probably isn't as explosive as Aït-Nouri going forward. And it turned out to be a brilliant decision because although Salah and Liverpool are out of form, Salah is still a world-class operator. And again, Aït-Nouri has not given him a sniff.
Yeah, I think he's been listening to Tyler because he's been banging the drum to bring Aït-Nouri in for a few weeks. And I like Bueno. I think Bueno's a good player. I think he's going to get better and better. But you want someone like Aït-Nouri in a game like that because he just brings a little level of composure. And what I really liked about his performance is how mature it was. You didn't see him bombing up the wings trying to throw crosses in the box. He was watching Salah or he's watching Núñez, whoever switched over to attack him. He always had his eye on where they were. So he did a very sensible performance, I think. And he's a good player. I think there's a little bit of, is he going to be an attacker long term? Is he going to stay as a fullback? This moment in time as a fullback, and he's the best left back we've got at the club, in my opinion. And I'd be starting him every game going forward now. And Bueno will develop; he'll continue to develop. But when you've got a talent like Aït-Nouri, you can do what he did. And as you rightly said, he's pocketed Salah for the 2nd game in a row. We would have had a clean sheet in Molineux last year if it hadn't been for the fact that he got injured. We brought Hoover on and it all fell apart within 40 seconds. But he's a top player and he's only going to get better. So for me, yeah, keep him in the team now. Give him a good run of games, get him settled in, and we're going to feel the benefit.
I mean, Tyler, what an incredible position to be in when you've got 2 ridiculously talented natural left backs who've both got a bit of pace. I think one's 19, 20, I think Bueno is, and Aït-Nouri's 21, 22. Young, talented, both in the long contracts. The future's bright there, isn't it, for Wolves?
Yeah, it's one position we're absolutely sound in, isn't it? I just think he's the better player out of the 2 at the moment. I just think he's a better left back than Bueno, and that's nothing against him, but he got tighter. He seemed, he was just a bit more aware, like Knocker said. It was a mature performance, actually. And you forget how young he is. It's a bit like Collins, isn't it? You forget he's 21 because he doesn't really play like a 21-year-old, but he can go anywhere, can't he, I presume, without getting too excited. And I think he is a left back. I think obviously the modern day fullback, they have to do as much going forward as they do going the other way. So I like him at left back. I think that's his best position. And on with Knocker, it's his position to lose now for me.
Absolutely. I was going to bring that on to Mike. It's hard to drop him now, isn't it? When you've got a clean sheet against Mo Salah and Liverpool, you'd think now that change is probably for the long term until there's probably 2 games in a week or there's a drop in form.
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, I'll be honest. More surprised than the others that he replaced Bueno. I've enjoyed watching Bueno. I think he's done well. And I did notice. I mean, there were some comments for him from Lopetegui after the Manchester City game, where he'd been asked about where Aït-Nouri's position is, and did he see him as a winger? Because most of the time when he's been used as a substitute so far under Lopetegui, he's essentially played left midfield or winger, certainly further forward. Sometimes with Bueno still behind him, usually. And Lopetegui had said, no, I'd see him as a fullback, and there he was on Saturday. But yeah, having played so well, he's in possession at the moment, so good for him. But there's proper competition there. There's two players who can play as an orthodox left back, and if he wants to play as wing back, then clearly Nouri is well suited to that.
Absolutely.
Don't forget he brought Johnny on when he took him off, so there's more options there, isn't there?
Yeah, and let's not forget as well, Johnny, probably pre-Cruciate, was one of the best left backs I'd ever seen at Wolves. Peak Johnny, Europa League, FA Cup run. Johnny was incredible. He was more of a wing back then, but he was fantastic.
He was very good. I think those are the two now both ahead of Johnny and Alas and Johnny. Clearly, Johnny's injuries have held him back a lot, which is a shame.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's harsh on Dennis Pearce, Ryan, saying he's the best you've seen.
Oh my God. I think that's a separate podcast. You are currently listening and watching to episode 52 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM's Mike Taylor, Mark Knott, Chris Tyler, and myself, Ryan Lester. I think we've had a proper analysis of that Liverpool game and picked out some highlights, so it's time to take some questions. I'm going to go to this first one, Mike, that you mentioned earlier on, and we could just get our opinion a little bit on that. Kev Taylor asks, has Lopetegui ball arrived? Now, my take on what Lopetegui ball would be the first 45 minutes v Villa away, the first 45 minutes v Liverpool, the middle part of the game away at Anfield, that press, that belief, that desire, that high up the pitch football, Mike. That's the kind of picture I'm getting going forward. What about you?
So what you're talking about there is more rather than a pattern. If I said what was Nuno's style, you'd say, well, we always had three centre halves and and built from there, and it was always basically the same. If there is such a thing as Lopetegui ball so far, it's an approach or state of mind. So now we're going to press. I don't know whether you can say in terms of a pattern, in terms of if you wrote down Lopetegui balls, you wrote down the formation. I don't think we're quite at that stage yet. And I just
draw lots of love hearts and kisses and stuff at the moment.
I'll leave that to you. But it might be a while before we get to that stage. We've as I say, with Nuno, when things were going well, you could more or less photocopy the team from the previous week, or at least the pattern of play. And if one player might come out, other player might come in, but essentially it was the same thing for quite a long time, and it worked really well. It might be that Lopetegui is going to have something different every week for the opposition to deal with a particular opposition. I think he did on Saturday, as you pointed out. I think that's probably not the first time it's happened, and it might carry on like that for a while yet. But if it works, it works.
Nocky, are we closer to getting an identity back again? Can you see a pattern emerging? What do you think?
I think we're definitely getting an identity, but as far as Lopetegui ball goes, I don't think there will be a specific Lopetegui ball. He'll pick players that he thinks can win a football match. It could be a completely different side than we're expecting, as it sort of was last week. There was a few changes we didn't think would happen, and he's very reliant on substitutions as well. I think he has a plan B ready to go, and I think he's probably got a plan C and D as well, depending on how the match is unfolding. But he's just a very intelligent manager. He will do what he thinks will win a football match, and he'll bring the players out you won't expect some weeks, and he knows how to win games, and he will attack the opponents and where he thinks they're weakest, and whoever's going to do that job for him, he'll bring in. So I don't think we'll ever have a completely settled formation. I think he'll have his go-to. But I think generally it could change every week. It's going to be fluid, and you need that in a modern day manager now. You need the ability to change and just attack each game as it is, because we could set up completely different against Southampton as we did against Liverpool and still hit 3 goals. It's got to be a fluid system now.
Tyler, what a horrible position for opposing managers if Wolves are changing it up every week. How do you plan for that? I mean, it's great for us as well. It's fun. I don't really care who plays as long as Wolves win, but to be so fortunate to have such a flexible coach that is prepared to have a different idea and not be stubborn, it's something we've always dreamt of.
Yeah, I totally agree with both of what the guys have said. he did it on Saturday was a prime example. He went 4-4-2 and put Nunes left wing, purely to nullify Trent's threat, to give Klopp got outdone by him tactically. And we said, didn't we, this will be season starts now. We'll have 2 weeks to work the players. He's got all of his players back. There's no real injuries at the club. And what did we see? It was exactly what we wanted. And yeah, I don't necessarily think there's a pattern of play or a style. I think it's like you said, Ryan, it's tempo, it's front foot, it's pressing. But he's got the side fitter. He's obviously got a backroom staff that are obviously working wonders as well. And yeah, I agree with the guys. I don't think 2 weeks will necessarily be the same. I think we'll probably see different Wolves again on Saturday. And then, like I said, Bournemouth at home will be a different test again, won't it? So he seems the sort of manager that can adapt to those situations and outthink his opponent.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's seen the graphic for the average positions, but obviously the two centre-backs with the deepest with the goalkeeper. Then Lamina was sitting with Neves a bit higher. The fullbacks probably on average were the same as far up the pitch as Neves was on average. I know he was high up for the goal. The furthest up the pitch was actually Sarabia on average, with Kuna just off him. I know you've mentioned that, Tyler. He's more of a 10 than a 9, and that might be proving to be correct there. And then, surprisingly, Nunes and Hwang were as high up the game. So that, for me, that is proper fluid out there. And I don't think Klopp, as brilliant as he's been at Liverpool, would have ever been expecting anything like that. And it was brilliant. So hopefully that gives you a good take on Lopetegui ball to come. Kev, great question. Little bit of Lopetegui love with this question. If you could have any other manager in the world football, would you still keep Lopetegui? Oh, yes, I'm falling in love again, boys, and I'm sure we're on the same page with that. So we'll. Thanks for your question, Jake, but I think that's a unanimous yes. We're going to keep our man. We're going in the right direction.
Anybody who's a good interview is all right.
Yeah, oh, there we go.
On behalf of the Interviewers Union, anybody who's a patient interviewer, he's good.
Mike's gone for the business answer, and it's a good one. Let's answer that then, Mike. How has he been? We've obviously listened to a lot of, probably all of your interviews, but does he come across as someone that wants to talk and explain himself?
Yeah, he's pretty patient so far, I would suggest, on the whole, with oiks like me. And the interviews tend to be done, after the game. He'll do 4 or 5 television interviews, and then there'll be one group radio interview. So I'll be one of 4, maybe 5, radio people sticking in. That's all done together, and then he'll go up and do the press conference. And before the game, I think you see the press conference. Wolves put it up, don't they? The videos where we all sit there. You see the broadcast section, so that's Sky, and then Premier League productions, and I get a little bit on the end, and then there's another 20 minutes, however long, with the sort of what they call the written journalists, the newspapers afterwards. And he's been pretty patient through most of those. I mean, he's clearly smarter than the average bear. He's got good enough English to manage perfectly well. He has one of his coaching staff with him who he just checks with if he uses any sort of idioms he doesn't understand, or I think maybe just chats to him for a bit of thinking time occasionally. Probably, I wouldn't blame him. But he sees them all going, so he's in position to deflect any questions before you've even finished asking. So smarter than the average. Look, he's managed Real Madrid, he's managed Spain. So with respect, he's not frightened to say anything. So he speaks very quietly. But if you write down what he says, in the second league game, he was digging out the referees after the Man United game, and he was saying,
hasn't he been booked 2 or 3 times already?
3, I make in the first 10 games. So,
fantastic.
Although he's the sort of bloke you can imagine living quietly next door to, and you'd pop round, if you needed a cup of sugar or whatever, and you'd have no problems. He'd lend you his lawnmower. If you write down what he says, he's clearly not afraid of saying whatever his opinion is. So I'm all for that.
Absolutely. Well, I think he's delivering on and off the pitch, isn't he? I mean, we're all falling in love back in Wolves again, and it's great to see, and especially after Saturday. We'll take one more question before we move ahead. This might be a bit of a reality check for people, but it's been a huge transfer window for Wolves, and obviously they've committed the £43 million to signing Kuna, I think on June the 1st or July the 1st, when next season officially starts. So, Tyler, would you say that a lot of the money has been spent now to almost try and guarantee our survival to protect us, or do you think there'll be more shopping in the summer?
Yeah, I think there will be, but I think we've proved you don't have to spend £50 million on a player. We've picked up Sarabia, Dawson and Lamina for £18 million.
Tremendous business.
For 3 players that improve your first 11. We've been guilty of spending stupid money. Fabio, you know, Nunes is now showing his worth, but there's some rumours about that deal, isn't there? And he might move on. I think the summer's going to be interesting, isn't it? They didn't want us to go down. If we'd have gone down, it would have been a disaster for Fosun, wouldn't it? So I think there's an argument to say that, yeah, maybe some of that money's been spent already. But we've got assets that if they want to raise some money and do it a different way, that they can. So I'm not too concerned, to be honest. But to answer the question, I'd say, yeah, we've probably spent a chunk of it.
Just with that question as well, Mike, and you, Nocky, I think there's been a bit of future-proofing with this transfer window. Obviously, they've confirmed the Boubacar Traore. He looks like he's got a lot of potential. Great goal in the cup. Obviously, we've spent 15, 16 million on a ridiculously talented centre midfield. So this window for me hasn't just been about now; it's been about future-proofing because
all windows have to be like that to a degree. But I don't know how much money Wolves are going to thinking of spending in the summer and whether they spent it now. And I can't honestly say I know the answer to Mike's question, but I do think it might be instructive to compare Wolves with Aston Villa. In this window, Aston Villa have ended it and left themselves short. They sold Danny Ings and have left themselves with Watkins and the youngster Duran they've got from America. And that's it. So they're a bit short, but they'd won 5 games out of 7 under Emery, so they'd bought that time to say, can we get decent value in this window? If we can't, we don't need to spend the money. I don't think Wolves were in that luxury position. So it might be, let's assume that Wolves and Villa have similar transfer budgets for a moment. I don't know if that's true, but let's assume it is. Maybe Wolves have felt they've had to spend more of their money now. Then you get into whether they've spent it wisely at this stage. At this stage, it looks as though they have. Will Cunha be worth his full amount of money when it's all paid? I don't know. I'll tell you in 3 years. But yeah, I think that would be a useful comparison at this point. I would suggest in as much as we can know, compare Wolves to Villa.
Yeah, great point. One thing as well I would like to say is credit to Wolves for the video of João Gomez, because obviously that hashtag took off, Nocky. Everyone was on it. I was tweeting it, and the club have embraced that. And the media team at Wolves really are in touch with the fan base, aren't they? And that video release is what we're all waiting for. And it was something to put a smile on your face. And we've got a player there that just looks like he's desperate to play football for Wolves.
The media team have been brilliant. I mean, they did it against Nottingham Forest, didn't they? When they put out the it's playtime tweet, Forest, and they replied with the broken down tree on the pitch, and that was fantastic. And they did the same with Klopp after he moaned about the third goal not counting, so the change score to 2-0. We've got a really, really, really good admin team, but just want to touch back on the window, if you don't mind. I don't think the business for the summer has been done. I don't think you keep a manager with Lopetegui unless you put certain guarantees in. We're going to move players on. Guedes cost us 30 million. He's going to go. We've got a lot of midfielders. We're not going to keep all of them, so that's going to raise funds. We've got a lot of options in the wide attacking area. We're not going to keep all of them. Through the middle, we've got Costa, Jimenez, Sasha Kalajic. We're not going to keep all of them either. So I think we will raise funds, and I think we'll go again. But for me, I think the priority was just make sure we stay in the division. Yeah. And then we'll build and we'll go again in the summer. So I still think there'll be funds available. But with the squad as it is now, I don't think we'll need a full rebuild. I think it'll be maybe 2 or 3 quality players just to finish it off.
Great points, Nocky. Fantastic points. That probably covers it for the questions. Now, the time has flown by on episode 52 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM's Mike Taylor, Mark Not Chris Tyler, and myself, Ryan Lester. One thing I want to talk about before we move on. Finally, Molineux feels like it's got his atmosphere back. Now, for me, I know we talked about it at the start, Mike, but early goals, high pressing football, excitement. Molineux had its bite back, and I think there was a bit of Liverpool had taken everything off Wolves in the league since their return to the Premier League this time round. There was a huge injustice a few weeks ago. Molineux was ready, and the team performed like Molineux was ready.
Yeah, and the place rattled like a rain on a tin roof for 2 hours, and it's fantastic. The team need that, but fans need to see entertainment. The whole thing, you get into a nice circle if that happens. You compared earlier the noise of the Neves goal to the Jota goal against Manchester United 3 or 4 years ago in the cup game. I think that was a good comparison. It crossed my mind as well on Saturday. Look, everybody's enjoying themselves, and crowds that are enjoying themselves make lots of noise. So yeah, it's a virtuous circle.
Yeah, fantastic. Nocky, Tyler, probably the best atmosphere at Molineux in what, probably 18 months, 2 years, if not longer.
It is, but like Mike said, if we'd have beat Liverpool 3-0 3 months ago, it would have probably been the same. I said to you when you were having the conversations, you can talk about it all day long, but Wolves fans have been starved of a good product. Even when we were winning, it wasn't great, was it? We weren't attacking, we weren't scoring goals. We've had a very bland product for 2 or 3 years. For me, that's the biggest thing. And as soon as you start, if you're 2-0 up after 10 minutes against anyone, Molineux will be rocking.
Absolutely. Nocky?
I agree, yeah. I think there's a responsibility of the fans to get behind the team, but there's also a responsibility of the team to lift the fans as well. And if you sat there bored and we scored, 9 goals all season at home or whatever it was, it's not enough to get you off your feet, right or wrong. But when you play like that, you score 3 goals, you beat a team you never beat, and you look like a really good football side, you're going to get the fans behind you. And the atmosphere was absolutely tremendous. It was a thoroughly enjoyable day.
One thing I would say that I don't know if it made a difference, because obviously, as Tyler said and as Mike said, the good football, the good times, it's people showing that they're enjoying themselves. It's going to make a good atmosphere. What was really good was the passion the fans showed on social media, the talk, the club listening about the songs, the club listening about the goal music. The fans and the club feel like they're in harmony. You mentioned that earlier on, Nocky. So the club are listening. Obviously, they want an atmosphere. The players want the atmosphere. So it's pleased to see. I know a few people, I think there's some fan groups started in terms of like talking about the atmosphere. Some people mock that. I'll always support someone that's trying to make a difference to the atmosphere. It's been poor, but as Mike said, it sits hand in hand with the product. If Wolves play better football and score more goals, the atmosphere will come back. But if the fans and the club can do other things to help that, I'm all for it. Let's try it. Let's get it all going. So yeah, fantastic. What a show. Done an hour, 1 hour, 1 minute, and I've thoroughly loved every second. Gents, thank you for joining us. But before we go, Wolves are away at Southampton on Saturday. I believe we're all at Southampton. Mike in the press box, Nocky, Tyler and myself in the away end. We'll start with the grown-ups first, Mike. If you give us your prediction and first scorer for Southampton v Wolves.
Wolves will start favourites, so I will say 2-0 Wolves and Sarabia. How about that?
Oh, we would absolutely take that now. Nocky?
2-1 Wolves, Sarabia.
Well, you know what? If Tyler picks us to win, it's over.
I think we'll just go there and do a job. 2-0. Ballon d'Or.
Wow. Has everyone said 2-0?
2-1, I have.
Oh, crikey. I'm so excited I wasn't even listening. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go 2-0 Wolves. I'm going to go with Matheus Cunha, and I'm going to keep saying it until he scores a goal.
Might be a while.
It might be a while. You have been listening and watching to episode 52 of the Wolves Report. Up the Wolves.